The following production is brought to you by the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show.
Talkin' Buds Leaf Show, the first episode of 2024. We ended 2023 in a pretty big way with one of our most viewed, engaged with, and I would say maybe controversial episodes we've ever done. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I was kind of doubting posting on New Year's Eve, but I think it worked.
Oh, it sure as hell worked.
Plus with some smoldering takes that a lot of people kind of agreed with.
A lot of people called us idiots.
Well, we are idiots.
Yeah, we are idiots. It's true.
I can't deny that.
I feel like some people tune into us whenever someone gives us a bad review, whether it be on one of the podcast platforms or YouTube or something. I feel like people, if you're tuning into this podcast and you're looking for in-depth numbers, breakdowns, or like film review or anything super in-depth, I think you're going to be disappointed. When you listen to this podcast, and what we try to go for is just two guys shooting the shit who at times are highly emotional, sort of scarred Leaf fans, but try to keep a level head when it comes to the big picture of what this team is doing and where this organization is going.
Yeah. And I have a couple New Year's resolutions for 2024.
All right, let's hear them.
This one applies to both of us.
Oh, yeah, I know where you're going.
The word like.
Oh, yeah. We got to stop saying, like,
there you go.
Look at that.
There you go.
Look at that right away.
I know.
It's just so instinctive.
I'm so sick of being called a valley girl or valley boy. And then I listen back to myself.
And you're like, they're not wrong.
And I have some pretty decent takes, but sometimes I do say the word like 1,000 times, and I don't like it.
I always poke fun at John Tavares for using the word obviously as like a transition word. Like he uses the word obviously as a period to end a sentence.
He's not the only one.
That's what we do with the word like.
Yeah.
The word like ends a sentence and then starts a new one. And we are going to try our best in 2024 to cut that out.
Yeah. I wish if we had more time, I almost want to put a counter on the video and we could play a drinking game. You would be
shit-faced at the end of a 30-minute episode if you took a drink every time we said the word like.
You'd be on the lawn with your pants down.
Yes.
Having a sleep.
Yes.
So that's my number one for this podcast. I got a bunch of personal ones, but no one wants to hear that.
Yeah, no one
cares about that.
Yeah, no one cares about it.
All right.
Okay, so let's try and remain level-headed off the top with respect to the big picture of this Maple Leafs organization. What I'm guessing is we're going to have the same thing happen to us this week that happened to us on the last episode where we talked about how the Leafs needed to put Ilya Samsonov on waivers, and an hour after we posted the video, Samsonov was on waivers. All kinds of reports from all the big heavy hitters that a William Nylander contract extension will be getting done any day now. It was Kyprios that first reported it, and he threw out $11.25 million is what they're hoping to get Nylander signed for, is a number he's heard, whatever. And since then, all the other guys have jumped on board and said they've heard north of $11 million as well. Your thoughts on a potential William Nylander 11.25? Let's just go with that number.
Okay.
11.25 times 8 years. Your thoughts on that?
All right. So I'm going to do a little bit of quick math here. Okay. We've been talking about the salary cap going up. And how much is the salary cap going up by?
$5.5 million,
Yeah,
five and
okay.
change.
So you do 11.25 minus 6.9. That's $4.3 million. There is your extra cap space out the door. See you later.
So
Like that's what raising the salary cap is going to do. That's why I hate when people just use that as a crutch to believe that they're going to add more roster players who are competent because the salary cap's going up. It's no. William Nylander is going to take that money. Mitch Marner is going to take that money, and it's going to mean nothing. So the number, I mean, William Nylander is having an incredible season. He's on pace to have the most amount of points that any Maple Leaf has had in a long time. I know Auston got 106 in one of the years. I'm pretty sure Willie's on a better pace than that. And he's been absolutely incredible. So, I mean, I don't know, man. This is just
it's basically the David Pastrnak number. Is what they're giving William Nylander.
And I know in the big picture, we don't want to be signing players to those contracts because we know what happens when you sign players to those contracts. They can't live up to the expectations of the contract, even though they're great players. But this guy, I mean, if you really look at it for what this season has been, he has been incredible. He's a hell of a hockey player. He's going to be competing with the David Pastrnaks in terms of point production. I think he's finally gotten to that level in his game where those comparables are actually a real thing. So I don't know. Like, it kind of is what it is.
Thought a lot about this since this story came out a couple of days ago. And here's where I'm at with it. There's a certain segment of the fan base that I see on Twitter that think that because they're giving Nylander this money, it means that they're going to, we're giving Nylander the money and then they're going to play hardball with Mitch Marner. Folks, I'm here to tell you, I don't think that's happening. I think the most positive thing, you can argue whether Nylander is an overpay or not. I personally would like to see him in the 10 million range. It's the price of doing business. If you want to keep William Nylander, this is what it's going to cost you. The fact that it's being reported that they could get him for 8 years, I think is a win for them. Because one of the trends that Auston Matthews has set with this team, whether you like it or not, is signing for not max term. In the case of his most recent extension, nowhere close to max term. And I think Marner is going to play hardball like that too. I do not see Mitch Marner signing an 8-year extension. So at least with Nylander, you're getting the 8 years. If you look at this hockey team as currently constructed, this is what giving Nylander this money tells me, okay? They're willing to have a similarly constructed roster next year as well, where a lot of the money is going to 4 guys, and then you're spreading out minimal amounts throughout the rest of the roster. If there's one thing this team has proven thus far, it's that if you can get competent goaltending, Martin Jones is currently posting a .930 save percentage. This is a good hockey team. This is a far and away a playoff hockey team with competent goaltending. Even with a banged up defense and guys who are AHLers playing on your defense, who've been played really well, but a lot of people look at them and say this isn't an NHL caliber defense. But with the firepower this team has, if they play the right way, like they did the other night against the Los Angeles Kings, this is a playoff roster. I think they are confident in giving... To me, this is what this signals long-term. We're going to pay Nylander, we're going to pay Marner, we're going to pay Matthews because we know at the end of next season, John Tavares, 11 million is coming off the books. And he's getting nowhere close to that after the fact. He might retire. He might go elsewhere. He might take a haircut. I don't think, just to be clear, I don't think some people throw out that Tavares would take the $700K. That's not happening.
I think you're looking at a 50% salary haircut.
Correct.
Based off his production.
Correct.
But he's also getting older.
Correct.
Yeah, he's in for a tough go, that guy.
Correct.
I think it's going to be ugly.
So I think long term, that's what they're looking at. I don't think a hardball contract negotiation with Marner is happening either. Like, obviously, they're not going to give the guy, they're not going to pay him more than Matthews. They're not going to do anything stupid. But I could totally see Marner coming in the 12+ million range for 4 or 5 years because they're like, we know that half of Tavares' salary is coming off the books in 26, 27. No, 25, 26, excuse me. So that's what I see. I don't think that this signals anything with respect to. I think this is our core. I think right now it's the core 4. I think they're looking at it as this is going to become the core 3 of forwards with respect to where the money's going. And I think that's their plan. There's no scenario, I think, where they're like, well, we're choosing Nylander over Marner. I don't think that's happening. Whether you agree with that or not, like, I have my own takes about what I'd like to see this team do in the long term, but if you're just going to take your biased glasses off and put your realistic glasses on, that's what I think is happening here.
I was going to say that. You always have to have those glasses on your nightside table when you're discussing this hockey team, because there are so many arguments of this team hasn't been successful. They have to move off either Nylander or Marner to try to get a different mix in here. But I think when Brad came in here and his first press conference, he kind of made the point that having these elite players is very important, especially to him too, because he got fucked over in Calgary. He had Gaudreau, who was getting 100 points a year. He had Kachuk, and both of them just said peace. So I think he's got a little bit of, for the lack of a better term, PTSD in terms of keeping star players around. So I do agree with you. I don't really agree with the Marner playing hardball with the term, because he did sign 7 years, I'm pretty sure, on the first one. I don't think he's in that Matthews camp. I think he actually just loves being a Leaf, and I don't really see that being an issue. But I do agree with you. I don't think that it's going to be I don't want to see Marner kind of get up to where Matthews is. I think he's kind of good with what he's at right now. He might get $1 million raise, and if the cap's going up even more after that, then
Nylander's about to pass him, and they're not going to. Yeah, they're not going to. That's not how that's going to work.
It is really difficult to kind of decide which guy is more valuable to the team. I think Nylander has some better intangibles in terms of, I think he's more of a winner. Deep down, he's had better playoff performances.
I think this harkens back to the conversation we had about Marner last week, which is I think Nylander is not as phased by nowhere near as phased by the market as Marner is.
But also that could come off as kind of having a nonchalant, I don't give a shit attitude. And Marner clearly does kind of buckle under the pressure. But if you're just looking at them as hockey players, forget the intangibles, forget the market. I mean, they both just offer, they're both very great hockey players, but they both kind of offer different things. Marner is just on the ice, even though Nylander's kind of catching up to him, though, because Nylander's on the penalty kill now, and he's making plays. Slowly but sure. William Nylander's career is just, have you ever seen a guy come in with elite skill and just have an exponential growth? Not super steep, but just every year he just gets better and better and better. And when you look at those two deals, if say Nylander signs an 8-year deal, Marner signs a 7-year deal. I mean, William Nylander's going to be 28 this year.
Yep.
So you're looking at the end of that deal. He's going to be...
Well, and there's things I'm not going to pretend to get into the specifics. I know, but the people who do know talk about how they can front load it with bonuses and that sort of thing. So by the time you get into the latter years of that deal, his actual cap hit is not that high, or the money owed is not that high. So if you wanted to move off him, some other team would be more willing to take him because they wouldn't owe a shit ton of money.
Yeah, but then take those glasses off of actually putting yourself in the general manager chair. I mean, this team hasn't won anything.
Yeah, so
it's. I mean, I know. I hate being the guy who's my buddies. I talk to people, blah, blah, but I know some diehards aren't super stoked about this.
Yeah, well, you know what? But again, today's episode's theme is wearing your realistic glasses. Those same guys would also not be super stoked if there were no superstar players on this team and they were scratching and clawing to get into the playoffs. And I think that's something that we as a fan base have to remind ourselves at times, because I have come on here and I have absolutely ranted and raved about these guys, and I've gone in on Mitch Marner, and I've ranted, and we've in previous seasons we've said we wanted more from Matthews, etc., whatever. But at the end of the day, you come back to that comment that Brad Treliving made that you yourself referenced a few minutes ago, that having star players is important. And I think that franchise, if you look at this Maple Leafs organization as currently run by Brendan Shanahan, who is the boss, ultimately values, that's the thing I think he values most, is having these star guys, and the fact that, what did I just say a few minutes ago? This team with even subpar league average goaltending is a playoff lock just with these guys. And I think that that's something they think is important. I don't think this organization, when people rant about, oh, you need to change the mix up and you need to go and get, listen, if there was a deal sitting there on the table to bring in an elite NHL defenseman, and you had to move off one of these guys and there were no move clauses or anything like that, I think they would pull the trigger on that in a second. But it's not there. It doesn't exist, which, again, comes back to our rant from 2 episodes ago where we talked about how the National Hockey League and its salary cap and the inability to make a trade makes for an absolutely garbage product. But this is the sandbox that we play in as Leaf fans, and that how this organization operates. Can't even get a sentence out of my face.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they have to have a whiteboard in.
They've got Brandon Pridham,
office.
who's widely regarded as the best cap guru in the league.
But like, I'm looking at the defensemen here, okay, and all these guys, nice guys. I'm sure they're great dudes, but they need to target defensemen because they're not getting Victor Hedman ever, you know. Like, Morgan Riley's kind of going to be their top guy, but we know Morgan Riley needs help, even though he's had a great year. But they need to start targeting a certain hockey player on the back end that can move their feet a lot quicker than what they have back there right now. They are so slow back there. It is insane. Like, they need to put together a list of dudes who aren't like, there's my first like. They did put together a list of dudes who can move the puck, but also be defensively responsible. And I don't know how big that list is, but all I know is I'm watching TJ Brody, who's going to be up after the season. I know he's not coming back unless he takes the biggest haircut of all time. Giordano, love him. Too old.
He's probably going to retire.
Liljegren, I think he kind of is what he is at this point.
But he's an NHL defenseman.
He's an NHL defenseman, but I don't know. They need guys who can move their feet, who can win races to the puck, who can skate the puck out of the zone when they're in trouble. Because right now, they just, when they get in trouble in their own end, they just can't move the puck fast enough. And sometimes that's why Morgan Riley's always been their number one guy, because he's the only guy who can actually take the puck from behind the net and skate it out of the zone. But
if you watch them, so you watch the game, Tuesday night's win against the LA Kings was largely regarded by everyone as their best win of the season. Like, bell-to-bell domination, because it was skating for 60 minutes, it was checking, it was outplaying a very good hockey team in the LA Kings.
I even know the LA Kings just had no energy.
So
they had nothing.
But if you look at, so this is where our argument last week about removing the coach comes back on the table. Oh, there's my first comes back on the table, is why can't we, when this team is operating at that level and showing a commitment to certain aspects, the tough aspects of the game, like checking and like forechecking hard, getting back, taking your guy, playing a structured defensive game, special teams, the whole 9 yards, they are, even with the defense as currently constituted, they are one of the better teams in hockey. I'm not arguing that they do not need to go and get 1 or 2 NHL defensemen. They absolutely do.
Who can move their feet.
Yes, but what I am saying is this team is literally in a place where they're a really good hockey team as is. I think when they play well and their star players are carrying the load and are doing what they're paid to do, they might only need a couple of guys as opposed to rebuilding an entire blue line, which some people think they need to do.
They have to, because they don't have a blue line next year.
My point is like, I think a lot of this team's problem is its commitment to playing a certain way night in and night out. And I think that's where, like, I absolutely teed off on Sheldon in the last episode, To a point that even when I watched it back, I was like, all right, you're good. You're being like, this is a bit pro wrestling promo on Sheldon Keefe here. But I think like when I come away from the game against the LA Kings, part of me is like, nice, that was really satisfying to watch. But then there's the other part of that coin where I'm like, really like, why can't we see this night in? Why can't you get this out of these guys night in and night out? So I think sometimes when they play poorly, we look at the roster as a whole and go, they're screwed. They're so like their depth sucks, their blue line sucks. But when they actually play well and the star guys lead the way, it elevates them to this level that we all want them to be at, which is a top 5 team in this league.
Put the realistic glasses back on. You can't play like that every night because it's an 82 game
But you can play like that more consistently than they do.
Yeah. Well, that's just the way they're constructed. But I mean, look at the Florida Panthers. If they play, we all agree if they play the Florida Panthers in the first round, like they're done.
Yeah.
They're cooked.
It's a like I said, it's a terrible matchup for them. The Panthers are a terrible matchup.
The biggest difference I see between those two teams is, first of all, the Panthers just have a better work ethic and play harder, which is we know is a nightmare for the Leafs when teams are actually just working hard for 60 minutes. They just have a hard time handling that. Number 2, just look, Brandon Montour, like Ekblad and Montour on top of their D lineup is just, it's just way better than looking at Morgan Riley and TJ Brody. And you can watch the Panthers defense. It's just better than the Leafs defense. So, I mean, they need to have a plan to replace TJ Brody because they need another guy in there or else they're never going to win anything.
Well,
but I mean, Martin Jones. I mean, last episode I said Martin Jones wasn't that good. That was a bit of a. I listened to that back and I was like, kind of sound like an idiot. But he's played extremely well over the past 2 games.
That's the reason why when you talk about like this team just needs someone to be competent in the net, and Martin Jones is giving them that. Yes, he has let in a few stinkers, but that's all they need. That's all they need. And when Wall comes back, Wall is not going to hit the ground running like he was when he got hurt. But if he can go in and play...
I'm kind of worried about that, actually.
Yeah, like he's not...
kind of worried he's going to come back, and it's not going to be the same.
Okay, so where are you at? Because there are people who are like, and rightly so, it's like having a quarterback in the NFL. Like if you don't have a quarterback, you have 0 chance of winning. If you don't have competent NHL goaltending, which... is a problem throughout a lot of the league right now.
Well, it's similar to the quarterback position where you have 32 teams in the NFL, but there's not 32 quarterbacks on planet Earth.
And it's the same kind of number. There's like 4 or 5 elite guys.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of like B-level guys.
It's the same thing with NHL goaltending. Except you play more games in the NHL, so the chances of a guy not being that great having a good game are higher. But yeah, there's not enough goaltending to provide the whole league with good goaltending. Right. So, I mean, with Martin Jones, he's playing extremely well right now, and he's a veteran in this league. So as long as this guy's playing well, I just put him in the net. And I am kind of worried about Wall coming back and kind of losing his momentum a little bit because, I mean, at the end of the day, he's really done nothing. He's had a couple good games here and there, but they're like, I would ride Jones as much as possible. And going back to what I said on the last episode, you call up Denis, the Hildeby.
The Hildeby.
Which I get Samsonov was so bad that Keefe was done. You can't put him in the net. He's awful. He's got a 600 save percentage. Like, the guy's terrible. But I also don't love calling up a guy and just sitting him on the bench and just completely stunting his growth. I know this is kind of I don't know if this is a good take or not, but I don't understand why. Like, you got to play this guy at some point.
Okay, I think he is going to get in there at some point. They're not going to have a choice because he started Jones back-to-back in Los Angeles and then Anaheim. And I was of 2 minds on it because I was the same thing. I was like, put Hildeby in the net. You brought him up here. Let's see what the kid's made of. And also, if Jones gets hurt, you are fucked with a capital F if Martin Jones gets hurt. But Keefe's rationale was, well, we wanted to go with Jones again because the travel between LA and Anaheim is basically nothing, and he's the experienced guy, and our team does not normally perform well against inferior opponents. And so we just want a solid guy in there because he's scared that if Hildeby goes in there inexperienced and lets in a stinker, it's going to take the wind out of the sails of the entire team.
And it ended up being the right decision.
Yes.
Because I thought Jones played extremely well.
I think the decision to be honest with you, I think the decision to have Hildeby on this road trip backing up Jones has less to do with Keefe and more to do with Samsonov, because I think Samsonov is in a place where he's in such a dark place mentally.
Yeah, they really
that they needed to he's cleared,
really bunged up. Right
he's
now.
cleared waivers. He's cleared waivers. As far as I know, he's cleared waivers. Like that has happened. He's cleared waivers. He's been assigned to the Marlies. But as far as I know, there's no plans for him to play for the Marlies. Like he is getting away from hockey right now. Like the dude is in the guy needs to go sit with like a sports psychologist and a mental performance coach or whatever and figure out how he got here.
It's rough being a goalie,
It is.
man.
It is. I feel really honestly, I feel it's frustrating when you watch games like the Columbus game last weekend, but you hear the guy after and like you feel really bad for him. Like that's a tough spot.
He needs to just learn how to play the position. Like he's running. You watch Jones play, and he just looks like a goalie. How a goalie's supposed to look, just nice and quiet in their crease, challenging shooters, like just being in the right position. Samsonov's just flying, like flip flopping around. Like I don't know, man. Like him and Jack Campbell need to go on a little ayahuasca retreat together.
I don't know.
Just,
Aaron Rodgers has came out of that
yeah,
off the deep end, but.
Yeah.
Couple things I want to get your opinion on. So I'm at this weird place with Sheldon, as you know. Like my feelings on Sheldon and wanting him behind the bench of this team are well documented. But, you know, I give them credit for how I thought they were excellent against the LA Kings, and then I thought they were really good against Anaheim.
They had over 100 shot attempts. And also that stat of them not being shut out for 181 games is a pretty wild stat.
So on the one hand, it's like the formula for this team to win is the big boys they carry the load, right? And Sheldon deploys the roster as such. But I think that gets called into question during the playoffs. And you look at the ice time last night, Marner and Matthews around 25 minutes, Nylander at 24. Max Domi plays 9:07, 6:24 at 5-on-5.
Max Domi has, I love Max, and our TikTok with Max and us gloating over Max is still doing well. But
you think he's got to pull his socks
I
up?
think he's got to. Yeah, I don't know. He hasn't looked that line has looked. I really like Calle Yarncroke. I think he's a player that you want to have on your roster. Anywhere you put him, he's going to just be, and Keefe has his trust in him and whatever. But I mean, I think sitting Robertson was the right move.
This is going to do nothing for everyone who likes to chirp me about being the president of Max fan club. But what the hell are you going to do with Nicky Robertson out there?
Yeah. I know.
That the guy is too small, and he just doesn't. He doesn't make an impact. And I know, 100%, no one likes to chirp Sheldon more than I do. I know those guys don't get a ton of ice time and a ton of good offensive opportunities with respect to being putting out there in the offensive zone. But it's tough when you're centering a line with
I don't
a
put
guy who's a fringe NHL player.
Don't put Calle Yarncroke in there because
no.
Somehow Calle Yarncroke's a plus 13.
Oh no.
Say what you want about plus minus.
Oh no. And Calle Yarncroke is on that line because he's a defensively responsible player, which Max Domi is not.
No.
So 100%.
Yeah. I am kind of coming around on, not that I ever really disagreed with it. I think it's just personally just something about Max. I just have a soft spot for him. But I mean, getting a more productive third line center who has a little more size than Max would be helpful. Because I think Max's biggest downfall is, even though he's a scrappy guy who can drop the gloves. He is very small.
Well, so you put him with Nick Robertson, who is also
who's
really
also
small.
very small.
Yeah, he's also really small.
That third line is going to have a hard time.
So what do you do with Max then? You move him over to the wing on the
I
third
don't know.
line?
They don't have enough centermen to do anything. So it kind of is what it is. That's the
like
going back to what the season is. Like, it's just
you're gonna put Pontus there?
Yeah, it is what it is. They don't have enough centermen, but I mean, you can go through the regular season with it, but once you get to the playoffs and you got to go line for line, I think they're going to be in a little bit of trouble.
And that's one of the things that they've struggled with in the playoffs is getting, because we've seen it time and time again that especially if the playoffs started tomorrow, they're playing the Florida Panthers. So there's no reason to think that Matthews and Marner won't have the same struggles that they've had in previous years in the playoffs, which is like they're being kept to the outside and they have a really hard time getting to the middle of the ice and generating quality scoring chances. So one of the things that's haunted them in the past is they've needed a big goal from a Pierre Engvall, and it just never came.
Well, you're hoping that the intangibles of Domi and Bertuzzi
he's not on the ice, Ryan. Like, he's not on the ice. Like,
he's gonna have to be on the ice more.
So that's that comes back to my original point, which is Sheldon doesn't want this guy out there. Like, the guy played 6 minutes and 24 seconds at 5-on-5 last night. 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, Sheldon does not want him out there. He doesn't want him out there. So what are you going to do? You're just going to keep shoving line 1 and line 2 out there and the fourth line, which he loves, who actually were pretty good.
This is what. Yeah, the least fourth line's actually not bad.
It's been pretty good.
Skate. Yeah.
Ryan Reeves just never needs to play again this season. It's over.
And Radko Gudas got the flu, so we didn't get to see that whole debacle. But I actually think their fourth line can match up with other fourth lines because Noah Gregor can skate.
So can Bobby McMahon.
So can Bobby McMahon, and Camp's just Camp, Yeah. So, but yeah, that third. I mean, I don't necessarily blame him for not having his trust in Domi. Like, he could be out there more, no doubt. But there are some nights where he is kind of. You don't really know what his identity is as a hockey player.
I don't think he knows, man.
One night he's like fighting, which I love. Another night he's just trying to be an offensive player, but he's just not. I mean, he's got 22 points in 36 games. I don't think having an awful offensive season. It's just sometimes I think he has a bit of a guy's got a whack load of penalty minutes too. But it's just sometimes I don't know what he is, and I understand why Keefe could be like, I don't know. Still love him, though.
And it's proven that, like I said, this team is at its best when the big boys are cooking. But the problem is when you get into the playoffs, those guys get shut down and they don't cook. Like, Marner and Matthews do not cook in the postseason. We haven't seen it. Every year when they drop the puck on game one, we go, hopefully this year's the year. But if you're going based on history, it's not there. Talk to me about Simone Benoit.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a third pairing defenseman here, but I mean, what more could you ask for in terms of having a guy get called up with no expectation? Like, they put him with McCabe. He's just a stay-at-home defenseman who gets involved in front of the net. One thing I will say about this team is ever since their little conversation about clearing out in front of the net, I think everyone's kind of made an effort to do that.
This team has been it's noticeable. The other night when Dubois runs Matthews into the boards, there's a clip on our TikTok from like a month or so ago where I'm saying, what are you so afraid of?
Yeah, so you know got in there, Nyes got in there.
We eat crow when we get proven wrong, and Dubois ran Matthews, and Marner was the first guy in there.
Yeah, and I think all around, I think Benoit's done. I mean, I think the fight in LA was kind of necessary, but he's dropping the mitts. He's clearing guys out front of their own net. He's getting in scrums after the whistle. He's got a bit of an attitude on him. Yep. Like that quote he said about Anaheim, where bad for Anaheim, good for Toronto. So, I mean, I think for coming into this season, you were extremely worried about their defense. And I know, and this is the problem, he's not a top 4 guy. So there's only so much praise you can heap on somebody. But for someone with no expectation, I think all the intangibles have been there. He doesn't have a point yet, though, which I find.
I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. That. He's a stay-at-home defenseman. I
don't care about that.
But I've been really impressed with this guy, and I do love the trolls on Twitter saying that Drager's reporting that it's going to be an 8-year, $8 million deal for Simone Benoit. But You just like these are the stories in hockey that you like to like root for.
Well, he's also, again, I come back to my point about like, it's so hard to play here. Like, no, it's not. Add Simone Benoit to the long list of guys who goes out there, plays hard, lays the body.
That's with no expectation, though.
And the whole fan base is all in on this guy. Everyone is.
In fairness, the expectation was not there.
It's true. But
anybody with no expectation who comes in and provides any sort of work ethic for this franchise is always going to be someone that this fan base is attracted to.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's Simone Benoit, but I like him. I like his game. But again, third pairing defenseman. Doesn't really skate that great, but I don't know.
Auston Matthews, 30 goals.
Yeah. I mean, what can you say about the guy? He's on a better pace than Ovi is to break Gretzky's record. So
it's pretty incredible. It's
I
again,
mean, we asked more for him at the start of the season. We want more from this guy. We want him to be Nate McKinnon. He's not Nate McKinnon, but in terms of goal scoring, like he's Ovi. Yeah, like he may be the best goal scorer of all time when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's only so much. Like coming on here and talking about how he's not playing great kind of sounds stupid sometimes because what more can you ask from a guy? He's 30 goals in 35 games.
Yeah.
Like he's having a hell of a season. He's crept up on Nylander for points. The dude is just on fire. How many shots did he have against Anaheim? Like 14? Like
this comes back to what I say. Although Matthews doesn't really get targeted in the whole, they need to break up the core discussion. But this comes back to what I said earlier about like putting your realistic glasses on and just being like, you know, it's frustrating when they get eliminated in the first and second round. Like rewind back to last year and how just you were over it after the series against the Florida Panthers.
Oh no, it was like, I think it was game 3 or something. They came out and they were just terrible and they got shut down. And that's where all the frustration comes in when you're talking about Auston Matthews, because he's kind of turning into like a legacy player. Like, look at Sid Crosby. The guy's 3 Stanley Cups. He's won 2 gold medals. Like he's led his team to victory in the playoffs almost single-handedly sometimes. You know, he's had a lot of help, but when it's time to step up in the big moments, that guy steps up in the big moments. And I mean, Ovi had a lot of criticism. He eventually won his cup, but at some point you look back at this guy's career and yeah, he's going to be in the 800s for goals scored, but you're going to look back and be like, oh, well, he never did anything and when it really mattered. So, I mean, that it's more of a legacy talk with him now.
And this is why I think so many people latched on to that win against the LA Kings, because Brian Boyle was on overdrive a few weeks ago, like 3-4 weeks ago. And he was actually talking about McDavid. And he said, get 100 points as opposed to 120 and be more committed to playing a defensive game.
You know who's doing that as we speak? Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
A guy who was back-to-back 100-point seasons. Where is he now on the points list? I don't see him.
Yep.
He's nowhere to be found. But guess what? That team is playing better than they've ever played. Ever since
and are a legit
Paul
Stanley
Maurice
Cup contender.
Reamed them.
Yeah, at Scotiabank. yeah.
They've changed.
Yeah.
And he's actually taken on that mentality, and look where they are. I think they have a good chance of passing the Bruins at some point this season. Like
Yeah,
they are that good.
Yeah,
I think he is the perfect example of a player who's kind of actually practicing that.
But they also, like, here's one thing I'll say about the Panthers. When he's on, they have a top 3 goalie in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
When when people look at, there's my second, like, I probably said more than 2.
Yeah, I've had
somebody
a couple.
else keep
now.
count.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Panthers' run last year, and everyone goes, you're right. After Maurice reamed them, they change and they play. You and I go on and on about the style they play and how they're a bad matchup for the Leafs, et cetera, et cetera. They took off last year because Bobrovsky returned to form.
Yeah. I mean, you also look at Tkachuk, too. It's just the guy's capable of getting 100 points, but he's the kind of player you look at when you're comparing Matthews, Marner, Nylander. It's this guy can get 100 points, but look what he can also do when he's ready to step up and be a big boy. He's got all the intangibles you need to take your team to a cup final with the way that guy plays.
Well, we started off 2024 on a realistic note, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long season, man. It's such a long season that it's just, if you look at an NHL season, it's the same thing every year. It's, you go on a couple of good games. Like, they played very well in Los Angeles, start to finish. I thought they played very well against the Ducks. They ran into some absolute stud of a goaltender who just had the night of his life. I kind of felt bad for him when he ended up taking the L in that one. But it's just such a long season of segments of coming on here and spazzing, and then coming on here and being realistic because they've actually played well. Like, there's one thing about the NHL season. It is an absolute fucking grind.
Yeah, it is.
It is a grind for fans, for players, for media. It's just a roller coaster of kind of talking about the same things all year, but it just depending on which segment you're in with that particular hockey team.
Yeah, I think when you rant about certain things, like you brought up last week when we tee off on Sheldon and someone throws his winning percentage in your face, I think that is, yes, the winning percentage is there. But I think where we come from, where I come from, when I rant on it is not just this season. It's everything that's been built up through all the years of him being here. And it's more of like I said, a high level view of like, do we think this team can get to where we all want them to be with him behind the bench?
I'm pretty steadfast on that take. Like, I don't think he's the guy.
I don't think he's the guy.
I don't think he's the guy.
Yeah.
I can go back and forth with criticizing Matthews and then feeling stupid because the guy has 30 goals in 35 games, but that's just the grind of an NHL season. But I am actually steadfast, just like I was last season.
I don't think they win and perform well because of anything Sheldon Keefe does. No. I think they're getting really good goaltending from Martin Jones, and when they have two good back-to-back wins in California, it's because the big boys are leading the way.
I'm on that take like I was last season with Dubas. I said all last year, I want this guy gone. I don't care what he does. I don't care. I'm the same thing with Keefe. I'm kind of done with this guy. He's probably going to, barring a disaster, he's going to be the coach of this hockey team, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of over him.
All right, well, we're going to get out of here. We will be back probably end of next week. I'm going to be sidelined for the weekend and into early next week, so we'll be back probably next Friday. If you look at their schedule, they got back-to-backs against the San Jose. They've got a home and home against the San Jose Sharks, then they've got the Islanders. We'll probably be back that Friday, the 12th.
Thing that is.
But a home and home with the Sharks?
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know.
Why do that to the? Oh, I guess the Sharks might be starting an East Coast road trip at that point.
So, and they're both. It's actually kind of fair when you think about it. They're both flying back.
They got kind of a weird, like their sked in January is a lot of Western opponents.
Yes.
Like they play the Jets a couple times. They have the Canucks. They got to go on another West Coast trip.
That's another home and home with the Jets.
Yeah, and then they go on like another West Coast trip basically, where they got to go through the western part of Canada, and we'll see how that goes.
Yep.
Always love a Leafs Oilers. Always love Leafs Jets.
Leafs Jets
is always good. The Jets are playing great hockey.
Yep.
The Oilers are the Oilers.
The Canucks.
Canucks are a great team.
Yep.
Get to shove it to them for another 7:00 start.
Yep.
I do enjoy the 9:00 starts for that Western road trip because that 10:30. I did the whole LA game, and that was it was 1:15 in the morning by the time I was going to bed. So 9 p.m. starts on the West Coast.
Big fan of that.
Yeah.
Big fan of that. Thank you very much for checking us out, everybody. Thank you very much for everyone who subscribed, commented, everything, interacted with the last episode. We got a bunch of new subscribers, a lot of nice things said in the comments. We really appreciate all of those. If you're checking us out for the first time, hit that like and subscribe button below. You can also follow us on our socials.
Spread the word. Tell your friends.
Leave a review. We really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time.